The staff only came back to this boutique in August. Just 3 months later, the shutters are coming down again, workers are waiting to be sent home, and an owner staring into the economic abyss of a second lockdown.
It's how it's going to affect the shop and my staff, and then it's how it's going to affect me. I mean, me personally, I have done everything possible to manage risk, to protect jobs, to keep the business going. But, you know, there's no furlough for a director of a company. There's been no funding, no support. So I've carried everything until now, and now I'm expected to carry it further forward with nothing. I'm operating on thin air.
During the first lockdown, this dress designer missed out on wedding season, her second busiest time of year. And she wasn't eligible for any grants, just loans, mounting debt. Second time around, in the run-up to Christmas, what should be her busiest time of year, the government will give firms forced to close up to £3,000 per month. But for furloughed workers, now businesses have to pay towards pensions and national insurance. You've got to make more contributions.
Yes.
Are you able to?
Well, any additional costs are just incredibly hard to meet, and it just means I'm taking more debt. The loans will have to cover that, and I don't want to get in more debt.
It's not just the little guys struggling in this storm. People queued around the block when Primark reopened in the summer. Today, its parent company announced enforced closures in the UK and Europe will mean a loss of £375 million. At this year's virtual Confederation of British Industry conference, the message was this pain is being felt across the whole of the economy.
Second lockdown, incredibly painful for business, a real body blow.
The lockdown may be blanket across the nation. What's needed now, say the CBI, are industry-specific measures.
We have some sectors under the most enormous pressure. If you look at aviation, hospitality, tourism, they are on their knees. And actually, what we have in place now is not enough for them.
How much help do they need? Well, this morning, Ryanair announced losses in the 6 months up to the end of September of around £170 million. EasyJet has lost more than £800 million during the course of 2020. A few weeks ago, the odd optimist was rejoicing recovery. Now the talk is of double-dip recessions.
I think GDP, the size of the economy, will contract in the final quarter of this year and the first quarter of next year. My forecast is that it won't contract as much as it did back in the initial lockdown earlier this year, when we saw the economy fall by 25%. So we think it might be more like 3 to 4%. But if these lockdowns are tougher and they last longer than they're currently intentioned to last, then we could see output fall even more sharply.
On Thursday, the nation and the economy enters a second lockdown from which there is no certain end date and no certainty as to how many businesses and jobs will survive to the other side.
Paul McNamara there. Well, joining me now is Lord Stuart Rose, who's chairman of Ocado and formerly the executive chairman of Marks and Spencer. Lord Rose, give us first your assessment of the impact on business of this second lockdown.
Well, it's going to be, as many people have said, Cathy, absolutely devastating. And I want to start off by saying, look, I don't want to appear callous or uncaring. Life is incredibly precious. We all know that. But this whole debate now is about, we can't just have a binary decision on or off. We have to be able to do two things at once. We have to be able to protect our economy and generate the sort of income that tax provides so that we can pay for the hospitals, pay for the services and keep the NHS going. And at the same time, we need to try and protect lives. But you can't have either or.
But what do you say to people who say, well, the economy can't recover until the virus is defeated? And when you're presented, as the Prime Minister was, with the worst case scenario of thousands of deaths a day, he had no choice, did he?
If the economy isn't going to recover until the virus is defeated, then I'm afraid we have got a really, really big problem, because the virus is not going to be defeated in short order. Even the government has said today there's the very likely prospect this will go on into 2021. What we have to do is mitigate it. What we have to do is exactly that. Pat our heads and rub our tummies at the same time, and we ought to come up with alternative solutions.
But I know you said you didn't want to be callous, but if you were Prime Minister and you had this projection of thousands of deaths a day, you would surely have acted as he has done.
I would act, and what we need from leadership today is we need strong leadership. We need to be told the truth. We need to be told the facts. We need to be told what the true mortality rates are for this very, very tragic disease. We need to know who are the vulnerable and who are the less vulnerable. We already know, because we left schools and universities open, that the university and school students are less vulnerable. We also know that anybody over 85 who has got some other ancillary illnesses is very likely, more likely to die than those people. So we ought to protect those. We ought to give those people some sort of special help and special protection, but it doesn't mean we have to stop everything in the country at the moment. And that's the issue that we're debating. And you've heard some very powerful arguments from much more intelligent people than me in the previous 10 minutes of your programme.
Do you think the Prime Minister has failed to lead on this?
I think we have missed a lot of opportunities, but I'm not here to ascribe blame to anybody. I'm merely pointing out that as a businessman, I'm a shopkeeper, I've been around for 40 years, but if it's not just retail, it's about all the businesses. It's about recreation, it's about hospitality, it's about the entertainment industry, it's about unemployment, it's about the lives and livelihoods of people who, if we don't get a grip of this soon, will be very, very severely affected. It's not going to be a stop and start. One of the things I find really quite difficult to understand, Kathy, is the business doesn't just turn it on today and turn it off tomorrow, and turn it on today and turn it off tomorrow. It takes time to wind things up. It's like a tanker. You slow it down, and it takes a while to build it back up again. Every day that we continue this, and we've now borrowed £400 billion this year, £40,000 roughly for every taxpayer in the UK, is going to be a deeper hole that we're going to have to try and dig ourselves out of later. Well, that's going to affect. That's going to affect beyond me. I'm an old man. Talk about the 20 and 30-year-olds who've got to live with this for the next 20 or 30 years.
Well, how deep is that hole likely to be? Do you fear there could be more people unemployed than the 3 million at the peak of the Thatcher era?
If it's 3 million, we haven't seen those sort of unemployments, as you say, since Margaret Thatcher. That will be catastrophic for this country. Can you imagine now if we've already got problems with people who can hardly feed themselves and put bread on the table? We've got children hungry who are not actually being looked after. We've got we've got food camps, food banks. What will it be like when we've got an unemployment rate currently of around 1 million and 1.5 million if it goes to 3 million? Just imagine that.
Do you think the Chancellor's going to have to extend the furlough scheme? Is he going to have to throw more billions at business?
Undoubtedly. I mean, the furlough scheme has been extended, but extending it by 1 month and just cutting it off on the 2nd of December, if, as we see, the Prime Minister does deliver his promise, will not be enough. We need to think about measures beyond that. We need to think long-term, 4, 5, 10 years out, because we need to start retraining people. We need to start putting infrastructure plans in place. We need to start thinking about, are we going to extend the rates holiday that retailers have enjoyed? That comes to the end at the end of April. Are we going to give some VAT relief as we come into next year? How are we going to stimulate people to come back into the streets? How do we get them back into public transport? How do we get them back into cities? And how do we give them back the one word now that they've lost, and the thing they've lost, confidence?